Welcome everybody once again to we're here at the back porch of the Ropes and Harrington Mansion in the town of San Anselmo, California. And my name is Guy Meyer, and I have a little TV show that occasionally manifests on the internet and local TV. And I'm with the Public Works Director of San Anselmo, Sean Condry.
Hello.
Hey Sean, I'm glad you made it. We're having a little adventure here, dodging some raindrops and occasional chainsaws and God knows what else. This is in the background. Hopefully nothing too much. Actually, it's noontime now, so maybe everybody's on their lunch break. Sean, it's kind of interesting to be with and I'm exploring my ideas of what's going on in California and trying to figure it all out. Not figuring it all out, but still, it's almost like this passage of time or history to that song. And the public works is, in my mind, is like nuts and bolts, right? Would you say that's what the essence of what a public works?
Yeah, nuts and bolts. We're I would say a service provider for all the residents, for all the different departments of the jurisdiction, and also for the council and for the town manager. We're a service provider, and whether it's taking care of buildings or streets or parks, open space, trees, traffic signals, or natural disasters.
That's pretty much a given.
Yes.
In terms of anywhere in any town or even city. That would be
Yes.
A public works department exists, and this is mainly the functions, as you said. Is there anything else that was on that list that are you a kind of an enforcer occasionally?
Yes, we're an enforcer. I mean, we have the Public Works and Building Department, and whether you want to get an encroachment permit or a grading permit. Also, with COVID, we do COVID enforcement. We have to pass some new ordinances in terms of enforcement that gave the Public Works and Building the right to basically, we usually give people warnings, but then we can ticket people too if they're not complying with local ordinances and even COVID-related issues.
Is this, as far as you know, is this something that the various public works departments of California, all of them are being given this extra level of responsibility in this era of COVID, or is it sometimes?
I think it's more unique to San Anselmo. I'm not 100% sure, but I think we're doing definitely more of it.
Because you would think maybe sometimes like the Department of Health would be responsible for compliance.
Yeah, and we police are responsible in the health department, but we work in conjunction with both of them. But the daily, 9 to 5 stuff with whether it's a restaurant or a cafe or hair salon, construction, utilities, we deal with, making sure they're complying with wearing masks or not having people come in during, shutdown when you're not allowed to have indoor activities going on, things like that.
Well, right now we're in about the first week of March of 2021, and things show some promising signs of lightening up, and it would be just wonderful to imagine that actually we are going to be on a steady trajectory now of opening up. I'm thinking in terms of the pressures of what you were dealing with
COVID. Yeah.
Like a month ago, December was sort of like maximum, I think, the pressure and the rising caseload, et cetera. I mean, tell me a little bit, give me some anecdotal stuff. What did you have to do? What were you doing that was...
Well, the negative part of it was, having to shut down, businesses or take away picnic tables, and then also, we were shutting down common areas and then people would get upset about that. We even had somebody overnight was resetting everything up that we took down, and we're a small department, so that was a lot of work. It was I could tell you in the beginning, probably every Saturday I was going home somewhat depressed because of just so much, it's hard, I think, on you as a person socially dealing with it and being, having to lock yourself away and not see people. But then when you're also doing the enforcement of it, and then people are upset with you when you enforce it, they're upset with you if you don't enforce it. And whether or not I agree with all of it, that's a whole other issue. But I have a job to do. And so that's where, trying to find a balance and work with community. Positive things, though, there was actually some great positive things. We're shutting down the avenue.
Yes.
And building a new park. Actually, the new park we built was probably one of the best things I think I've ever done. We built that park in about 2 weeks. And we worked with, there were local businesses that donated time and money. And there were contractors who donated some time and money. And that was, to me, I call it community park, not Creek Park, because it was such a positive feeling out of that, and people have loved it. Mm-hmm. So there's some great things, but I call COVID the mud on the cake, though, with our day-to-day, kind of like my cookie cutter response, or whatever you want to call it, canned response to people, because some people are really upset about how long things take, but we have COVID enforcement on a day-to-day basis. We have our day-to-day work. We have our large projects, whether it's paving projects or building, remodeling parks. And then we have budget cuts and furloughs and staff shortages. And so it's hard because everybody wants everything, especially with, I think, COVID, people have gotten a little bit more anxious and, not happy in their day-to-day lives. And so that comes out more,
Well, I just wish we could truly put all that behind us, the COVID thing. I hope that there's no rebounds. But in terms of your enforcement of, you would be enforcing the guidelines or the mandate that emerged, not just out of San Anselmo, correct?
No, it's the county and the state requirements.
Right. Was there, and I guess was the council there or the town manager there to give you the direction of what you had to do, or was that something?
Yeah, we were, the council and the town manager basically were told that we have to be the local enforcement for things related to COVID, some things we do work with the county when we need help, and there's daily reports coming from the county about what's going on with the COVID numbers and, whether we're, at purple or red tier, things like that. And then also, in the midst of all this, there was the PSPSs, or I can't remember if that was before or after the public safety power shutdowns, and then the fires. And so the last year or two has been a whirlwind of fun.
A whirlwind of fun. That is maybe just 2021 on the planet Earth, or, taking it down a level, or zooming in to California, or zooming into the town of San Anselmo. We all have our sort of unique world of fun. But California, broadly speaking, for a public works director, has a bunch of challenges.
It's probably the hardest year I've ever had. I'll tell you, I've been doing this for 12 years. And I don't know if you know, Guy, but I'm the longest standing public works director in Marin County now. I think the next closest one has maybe 4 or 5 years.
That is amazing.
So I'm past my shelf life already.
No, you're not. No, you're not. You got another 20 years to go.
Yeah.
I can't believe it. You're just a young guy. For 12 years is nothing.
Yeah.
Oh, come on.
But dealing, I actually much rather deal with landslides or flooding or trees down. 2016-17, when we had that huge rainstorm that lasted 2 months.
Right.
We had 100 trees down, we had 30 landslides, we had localized flooding, and that was hard. I actually literally pushed myself one where I worked 50 hours over a weekend and passed out, had a severe concussion. But I'd much rather deal with natural disasters, and I guess COVID is a natural disaster, than COVID. COVID has been probably one of the hardest things I've ever dealt with as a public works director in my professional career.
I can't imagine it being anything. It's just the nebulous quality of the whole element, as well as the, as we were mentioning, this sort of stress and anxiety that's common to all of us right now, unfortunately. There was the book on that word trigger, that people's nerves are kind of shot,
Yes.
so to speak. All of us,
understand
maybe.
why.
But yeah, it's It's difficult. It's very interesting. And I don't think I'm going to pursue too much more, though I think it's an avenue of, could go off of the various elements of what it was. Let me get back to the beautiful little park that you described with such pleasure, and I think anybody who is a resident in our little town, we were just very fortunate in terms of a timing where some buildings that were built over a creek had to be torn down, and because of structural foundation issues, the
Flood control.
And rather than tearing the entire thing down, the platform was left over the creek, and this has become a marvelous little gathering center with 6 feet spacing between picnic benches, not to mention the nice pizza joint next door, and the beer. So it's sort of like opening up this option of a kind of a new vision, really, of California being an outdoors experience.
Yeah.
And kind of like getting a lot of people in touch with that creation of maybe a new direction that we've been pointed to. I'd like to.
I like to think it's been a long time in the making. I mean, personally, professionally, since I've been here, we've fast-tracked the ability for restaurants to have outdoor tables. You used to have to go through planning. Now you can get a fast encroachment permit to do that. And even with what we're doing now, obviously because of COVID, there was an urgency ordinance that was passed, and Mill Valley and San Anselmo were kind of on the forefront of that. We worked with them to pass this ordinance to allow very quickly for businesses to have parklets or use their parking lot or do things like that. And I do think you're right, though, that we're maybe headed towards a place where we can have enjoy the outdoors more. I mean, part of the problem with our streets and our infrastructure, not just here but throughout the U.S., is it's built for cars, right? And we do have a complete streets policy, safe routes to school, and we're supposed to look at being more multimodal, more for pedestrians, more for bikes. And so I kind of think COVID has kind of helped us along that way, in a way, if you're looking at the positive side of it,
Right.
where we're getting outdoors more. We have those temporary parklets. We're looking at, can we make them indefinite? We're going to be having some public meetings.
I think a lot of people would definitely cast their votes in favor of that if given that option. And I think it's like, this culture and our little civilization here needs to be nudged. There is something not quite entirely fulfilling, I think, about our modern civilization. I'm going out on a limb saying that, maybe just me, but definitely just me. No, but we've just kind of, back in the 60s, I mean, every rock band made songs, satirizing or mocking our crazy car civilization. Everybody, and 50 years later, we're still in this crazy car civilization, and we've made it kind of more unpleasant because there's so much more cars and people. So, anyways, I think personally that California and the planet is trying to be nudged in a way that is more aware of our natural surroundings and nature. We won't be people quite.
That's part of the reason why we're here, right? I mean, I moved here for the schools, and also the funny thing is I moved here for the trees. I love trees.
Yeah.
But I oversee trees now, so God made a joke on me. But
let me ask you about regulations in terms of the Public Works Department role in that. Does the Public Works Department of San Anselmo, or maybe any locale, is it involved in the creation of regulations for its own town to govern people's, because this is sort of an issue that in my mind, at what level do we balance regulations versus trusting people?
Well, regulations come from so many different avenues. They can come from state down, right? There can be county things that come up, but then there's also the town council will have rules and regulations that they want to look at us enforcing or changing. There's committees, like the Sustainability Committee wants to look at certain changes to our building code or our local codes to make things more green.
But that's the planning department, right?
It's planning, but it's also then public works. We look at like public works is also building in San Anselmo, which is not always the case. And so one of the things like we're looking at changing the code in terms of maybe, you know, what happens with electricity versus gas, in new homes, we require homes to have only electrical. I think there's jurisdictions that are doing that, so the Sustainability Committee is talking about that now. We did a flood ordinance recently where we required that all businesses downtown are required to have floodgates, We have enforcement capability, but really it was less to be punitive and more to be proactive, to work with the businesses and say, do you have a floodgate? And if you do have a floodgate, do you know how it works? Does it fit? Is it rotten? Do you need a new one?
Yeah, well, that's interesting because I think that's the issue with our regulatory world is sometimes when you enforce it, even things that may be of a would appear to be a logical, like the electric mandate versus gas or whatever. When it's a mandate, it might be denying somebody their own creative options, and
there's always that.
Yeah, I know, but that's the element of that I would hope municipalities or towns lean toward giving more trust to the people, as opposed to trying to necessarily guide them with things that seem good today, but maybe will be.
There's always a double-edged sword to any rules and regulation, but there's positive things. Like recently, I don't know if you know this, but about a year ago, I think we're one of the first jurisdictions in California to adopt a tiny house code. And this is a very positive thing, because what it does is you can have a 400 square foot house or little unit that has lower ceilings, you can have a ladder staircase. It has all these exceptions that you can't do in the normal building code. And part of that is to actually allow people to do something, whether it's building an ADU or maybe buying an empty lot.
And an ADU is?
An accessory dwelling unit, So it was a step in the direction to try to make it more affordable, more accessible for a second unit. But so they can have positive aspects. I enforce the public works and the building code. I don't necessarily agree with everything in the building code. Like for me, single-family homes should have more leeway, but I still have to enforce the code as it's written by the state of California and as it's adopted by the town.
Well, I'm just old-fashioned. I really like the concept of a man and / woman's home is her castle, his castle.
I would agree with that.
And it really should be. I have friends telling me about they put a little addition, finally got a little addition on their backyard because it was one of the smaller, typical little homes here in the flats of San Anselmo. Might have been number one, a two-bedroom, but they put the addition on, but the town regulations now said because they added that little square feet on the back that they have to have a second parking space. To have the second parking space, they had to remove some trees from their 50 feet of frontage. That's sad to me, particularly because of the fact they didn't really need the second parking space. They were fine with the space it was enough for their family. They didn't need this. And then they were told that they now had to replace the trees that they had cut down, even though they no longer have the space in the front yard to put the trees, and these like, to me, it seems like.
So you're hitting, to me, the nail on the head, which is you're talking about an individual right versus what's good for the community. And a lot of times my job is balancing. It's like I always say it's me versus community, not me, the public works director, but the individual versus community. And there's individuals who want to do things that in theory maybe they should or shouldn't have the right to. I'll leave that open-ended. But the point of my job is to what is good for the community as a whole, whether it's traffic calming. Like San Francisco Boulevard has all this traffic calming on it, and some people love it and some people hate it. But the point was to slow down traffic and make it safer, which it has done. And so if you live in your house, maybe your addition is innocuous, but if we just let people do whatever they want, like I had a property where the guy had probably 7 extra structures he built. It looked like a war zone on there. So where do you find that balancing act?
Well, I give room to eccentrics and cranks in the community. I think it's better for the average person will come out ahead if we accept a few
Quirks.
deviants. But
I would agree with that.
let's jump into really this. I just like exciting movies. I like to go to a movie. I don't want to be in the movie itself in terms of life. But all right, but let's go into. We've had some natural disasters in California, but and we're in this fantastic mansion that I wish we could take a tour of, but we're not going to do that. This mansion that we're in, this little alcove here, has all its walls were created from bricks from the 1906 earthquake, right?
Yeah, a lot of
Believe
the
it.
bricks all around here are from the 1906 earthquake, supposedly from the fire, and that's why they're burnt and charred and melted. So,
Right, there are bricks that are glazed
Yeah.
with, they had, I don't know what, the 2,000 degrees, I mean, incredible. But we had the fabulous event known as the California earthquake in 1906. And of course, no public works director in California will ever have to deal with calamities of that nature.
You don't.
What?
You sure?
Sean, how's it going there? You take a second? Good. Okay, so I personally feel like, Guy here, that we've been nuts. We've been nuts on the planet, been nuts in California, building and building like there's no consequences, and now it's even more, but this is not your domain. What happens after a moderate earthquake in the Bay Area for the public works directors of the Bay Area? What do you do that, I mean, besides, God
Well,
knows what?
I'm a little unique. So public works will definitely have to respond to earthquakes, as will building departments, right? And
Right.
other departments typically within a city, like police and fire, right? I'm public works and building, and so during a response, we actually just had a meeting with the county about where, in an earthquake, where would all the debris go, right? And so we're working on a place where would you take all the debris to off-haul it and have a place to store it,
Here
to
in
get
the
rid of it.
county?
In the county, yeah.
County what?
Also, like cities like San Francisco and Oakland have a soft story program, because they have a lot of buildings that soft story is typically like if you have like a floor over a wide open garage below, right, where it just passes through, and so it creates a weak structure. I think we have a few of those here, but we don't have a program for that, which we probably need to do. We've identified it, and I think our hazard mitigation plan. And then, there are, we did do unreinforced masonry buildings years ago. We addressed that. But in an earthquake, one of the things, I'm also certified by the state of California to inspect buildings during, whether it's in San Anselmo or anywhere else in the state, they could call me and say, hey, we need you to come inspect this area that's been hard hit by an earthquake. And so, that San Anselmo is probably better off than a lot of places, and so is probably a lot of Marin, because like single-story or two-story homes that are made of wood are usually very, very forgiving in an earthquake. But once you get 3 or 4 stories, and if you have, the taller you get, the more what's called base shear forces you get that can cause it to shift or topple. And so in a major earthquake, we'd have to go around inspecting all the buildings. We have something called a green, yellow, and red tag in the building department, where if during a major event, it could be a fire, it could be any kind of disaster, we would inspect the building, and if it's good to live in, we would put a green tag, and if it was, you can get your stuff but couldn't stay there, we do a yellow tag, and if it was dangerous, we put a red tag. And we've had to do that throughout the years to buildings, both after fire here or cars going through the front of a building.
Tell me about the yellow or the red tag in terms of a person's not wanting to, this house is fine. I don't got no other place to go. What's the legalities there for?
Legally,
a
they're
town?
not supposed to be there, but the town has to do its job. Like I do believe, big reason why I do this job is because I believe in community service and providing something valuable and meaningful to the town, and so protecting people from public safety and protection of life and limb are super important to me as a public and building director. And so if your house gets a green tag, it's safe, but if it gets a yellow tag, it says you can get your stuff and leave, or a red tag, you can't go in. If someone chooses to go in there, in theory, we could have them, removed from that for their own safety, but part of it's not just to protect them, it's to protect the community around them, right? And so if someone wanted to go back in, the normal route would be to get an engineer to inspect it. Like if you get a yellow tag and have an engineer look at it, say the building's safe to move back into. But you're coming from the perspective that they have the right.
I just had to put that out there because, you know, just.
But don't you think protection of the public sometimes is, there's protection of the community as a whole versus the individual, and it is a balancing act, right?
You talk about homeless in California and this homeless problem.
Yeah. We're failing socially on that experiment, or whatever you want to call it.
After an earthquake, there will be a major addition to the homeless community, almost everywhere. And so nobody wants to be homeless, and it's I don't know whether somebody could have a sign that says, "Sorry, I bear full responsibility for my own life and limb. Nobody's required to rescue me." You know.
Well, part of it's about liability. So when the town does things, if you do a red tag or yellow tag, it's about liability. And if someone refuses to listen to that, right, it's kind of.
I don't want to take this any further because I know my own things, and it's silly. It's okay. I get.
A big part of the public works director's job is about liability, reducing liability for the community and for the town.
All right. Well, let's take a look at the liability thing, because you just established in this court of law that a small home, a single-family home, or a one-story home, or a two-story home has a probably measurably. I mean, you're saying it's almost a statement of reality or fact. It has a much greater chance of withstanding without damage
a single family house
than a large apartment. Depending on what your status is, and so I mean, I'm feeling like that there is a value on behalf of a community to have not to expand the amount of high density structures in your capacity. If you do expand the amount of high density structures in your community, then you have a resultant obligation to expand your services of whatever, first responders, in because those will be the places, correct?
Yeah. I mean,
where you're generally speaking.
Well, in theory, if you have more people, you need more first responders and more hospitals, right, and all of the above. I just want to correct something in terms of single-family homes or two-story building. You know, whether they're a single-story or two-story. It's not that they won't get damaged.
Right.
It's that there's less likely a loss of life and limb. Because when you seismically upgrade a house or build a new house, it's not to prevent structural damage. It's to prevent loss of life and limb. So like, a multi-story house, but you can design them to be safe or safer in an earthquake. And but the question about services, I mean, it's a very political question, right?
Right. I'd like to. So, but also, because frankly, I just stop with the development machine. This is me speaking here, but I get to do my little. Editorial. Also, an apartment complex has a lot more, I won't say call them moving parts, but parts, whether it be, probably they don't have gas anymore in apartments, but electrical, sewage, water, all these elements. If one goes, is it conceivable, is there some truth to the fact that what causes someone to yellow tag a house could be in the realm of water, or it could be in the realm of sewage, or
maybe sewage, maybe gas, depends on what's happening. Yeah.